We're just enjoying the benefits of your newly opened ports, miss. See? We know all about your culture, all your fancy words, guy shoes, seiku. I'd like to open up your borders.
Leave me alone.
Sailing over.
Hey, let's have a cultural exchange.
Please let go.
Someone stop him, why don't you?
Stop it.
Hello everyone! I hope you're having an amazing day, because if you're having an amazing day, I'm having an amazing day. And if I'm having an amazing day, you too should be having an amazing day. Alright, I'm now working on a video entitled Pseudo-Masculinity Gurus, the rise of pseudo-masculinity gurus. And it basically talks about these quote-unquote masculinity gurus such as Elliot House or Jordan Peterson, who basically make a very, very good living by exploiting the insecurities of insecure men, right? That video should be up by the end of this week. You know, it takes time to do research and actually work on it. So I'm just gonna do a quickie for you today, just to keep you occupied, so you know that I haven't forgotten about you. Okay, this video is entitled 5 Ways to Spot a Sexpat, right? Okay, what is a sexpat? We need to start with a basic definition. Well, basically, a sexpat is a man in his own country who's not doing very, very well sexually in his own country. So he goes to another country, always a poorer, less developed, less affluent country, in order to, you know, get his pee-pee wet, because that's the only way he can get his pee-pee wet, right? By using the currency, or rather by capitalizing on the fact that he has a stronger currency, right? Now, a sexpat, first of all, the first way you can spot a sexpat, right, is that he's always, I made a list here, he's always a man from a more affluent country. You will never see a man from a poorer country going to a more affluent country to be a sexpat. It's always a man from a wealthier country going to a poorer country, usually like, you know, wealthy Western countries, going to places like Southeast Asian places like Thailand or Vietnam or Philippines, not to appreciate the local culture, but only to, you know, satisfy his carnal urges. Now, sexpats often come hand in hand with yellow fever, but I'll get to the second point later. Right, that will be the second point. Okay, now, first of all, I need to clarify so nobody comes and attacks me in the comment section. The only ones attacking me will be the sexpats, yeah? Because the shoe just fits too well, okay? Most white Western men in Asia are not sexpats. However, that does not negate the fact that most sexpats are white Western men. You see the difference? You see what I'm talking about? Now, there are also sexpats from Japan or South Korea who come to Southeast Asia to capitalize on their stronger currency, but generally, you know, compared to, you know, other types of sexpats, there are these Japanese and Korean sexpats are far less ugly and a lot more civilized, so they're a little bit more tolerable, you know. Okay, first of all, he's always a man from a more affluent country. You never notice men from poorer countries going overseas, you know, to have sex, because for these men, seeing a prostitute in Southeast Asia is as cheap as getting a bottle of whiskey or something for them, right? So it's not really that big of a deal. Okay, second way to spot a sexpat. Okay, the sexpat usually has very, very far right political views. Usually, but not always. There are leftist liberal sexpats, but most of them have far right or alt-right views. Now, You typically find these fellas on forums like men going their own way, you know, MGTOW. You hear the phenomenon of men going like, MGTOW in Asia, baby, you know. You find them on misogynistic forums like MGTOW or Red Pill or Stormfront, which is both misogynistic and racist. But you'll also find them on Reddit groups such as R China, R Vietnam, or even R Malaysia, because these cretins have infiltrated these Asian Reddit groups. Okay? One of the common ways to spot a sexpat usually is by their complaints that, you know, multiculturalism has overtaken my country. The woke liberal mob has gone berserk, so I'm escaping to Asia, to Southeast Asia. But when they come to Asia, they themselves do not like multiculturalism if it doesn't fit their own cultural mode. If it doesn't fit their own cultural mode. Like I once knew a sexpat, an American sexpat who was an ESL teacher, and this is another way to spot them. Usually these people, you know, they come as ESL teachers to Asia, because in Asia, if you're a white guy, it's not really difficult to get an ESL teaching job. You can be the worst, most degenerate piece of shit fresh out of Alcatraz, and you could still find yourself an English teaching job if you were to speak English with a modicum of fluency. Anyway, this guy is the same guy, this American guy is the same guy who's one of those right-wing, MAGA, you know, MGTOW type of guys, right? With a Malay wife, who's complaining about like forced multiculturalism in America and complaining about how the leftist woke mob has overtaken the country. He's my colleague. And at the same time, this guy is also annoyed. He gets annoyed if we speak Malay in front of his face. I live in Malaysia. And he doesn't understand. So once, being the Karen as he was, he went up to the academic director in that language center and said that we needed, he proposed to her that, well, we needed to be a lot more inclusive. We need to all speak English so that everybody understands everybody. Well, he just didn't know that we were, I mean, I'm sure that he picked up on the fact that we were snitching on, we were talking about him behind his back. You know, it's wonderful to know a language that someone else doesn't, because you can talk about them behind their back in that language, right? Because nobody liked him, okay, because he was very arrogant. I mean, we knew he was American because he was very arrogant. No, just kidding. I mean, it's there are a lot of very nice Americans out there, so don't hate me for this, okay? Okay, yeah. Number 3, he's often very, very arrogant. Very arrogant, you know, with very condescending views towards locals and local culture. Now, the sexpat often sticks within the expat bubbles, right? He doesn't deign to actually learn about the local culture and understand the local point of view or the local way of life, right? The sexpat, because he comes from a wealthier, more affluent country, even feels that it is his right to tell you that the values of his culture are better than yours. Like, I once knew a South African sexpat, right, who had this eerily similar vibe to SerpentZA. Now, I mentioned him before on the Reddit forums. This guy got bashed up at the Roof, Kuala Lumpur, at the Roof, Bandar Utama, right? The Roof is a nightlife outlet, by a bunch of Malaysian Indian guys because he was getting way too friendly with their girls, right? And this guy basically had to get stitches, and I actually helped him out. You know, I actually brought food over to his house. I brought my mom's dishes that that she cooked so that he wouldn't need to walk down to the shop to buy food for himself. For 2 weeks, he ate humble pie, but guess what? After 2 weeks, after he'd recovered and no longer had to walk in crutches, he was back hitting the nightclubs. Usually, a sexpat has a very arrogant view, and he will openly tell you that, yes, I think Western culture is better than Asian culture, right? Like they actually make no mistake about it. Even if you watch YouTube channels like people like SerpentZA or Lawai, you can see a certain Western condescension that's steeped in an Orientalist sense of cultural supremacy. Like they won't say it openly, explicitly, because they know that they've got Asian subscribers, but they may say, for example, well, Western men do mature socially than most Chinese men because we move out of our parents' house earlier, right? Not caring to respect that the multi-generational family unit is part and parcel of our Chinese culture. It has been for hundreds of years, and we love living with our parents. I'm only here at my studio, right? Because I need to film. I don't like filming at my parents' place. It's disturbing, but noisy. But I don't live here, yeah? I own this condo, but I don't live in this condo. Now, if I'm working late, I might sleep over here, but most of the time it's basically at our house, my house and my parents' house. So most of the time I'm there, right? But usually the sexpat has a very condescending attitude, not only to local culture, but to local women as well. Like on these red pill forums, I actually saw one of these Australian sexpats going like, you know, oh, Asian culture teaches women to have, you know, submissive kindness. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Do you know how many times my knuckles got rapped by Asian women teachers at school? What is all this submissive kindness? They have a very condescending, not only a condescending view of Asian culture, which they don't even understand, but also the impression that the sexpat gets of Asian women seems to come purely from Orientalist movies like Madame Butterfly, you know, Orientalist literature like Madame Butterfly, or, you know, or Japanese porn, you know, the idea of a submissive geisha girl. And oftentimes the sexpat, you know, ends up with a woman who's a little too mouthy and a little too outspoken and not quite what he was expecting, because he assumed that an Asian woman would be submissive and obedient to a white man. And eventually they get very, very sad, very disappointed at the end. I'm going to put a video of a very, very disappointed, disillusioned sexpat who thought by getting a Chinese wife, he was getting a submissive housemaid and sex slave. But obviously his impressions of Asian women came solely from watching Japanese porn or, you know, Orientalist literature, like which portrays Asian women as being really easy and really submissive to white guys. Okay, usually the sexpat has a hate boner for Western women, right? He usually complains that Western women are too fat, too feminist, too awful. You know, that Western women treat women like garbage. Well, I spent 4 years in Australia. No Western woman ever treated me like garbage, okay? But these sexpats really seem to have a bee in their bonnet about Western women. And they seem to put Asian women on this pedestal. They put them on this unnaturally high pedestal, but only until an Asian woman talks back to them or rejects them. Then they'll go fucking berserk, right? Because they assume they have 100% success rate with Asian women, right? But this hate boner not only extends to Western women, like if you go on those MGTOW men going their own way forums. Usually, the sexpat also has a hate boner, people like SerpentZA or Lawai. The sexpat also has a hate boner for the local Asian men. Now, whether that arises out of a sense of competition of anxiety or the fact that the local men reminds them of their father-in-law whom they hate, or brother-in-law whom they hate, I don't know. But as you'll see in the comment section, the sexpats often have a real hate boner to local men, right? They believe that they're superior to the local men, if not racially, culturally, right? So the fifth most common way of spotting a sexpat, the fifth most common trend of a sexpat is playing the "I'm not racist because I have an Asian wife." Right. Remember the American sexpat I talked about, the former colleague of mine at the language center, you know? Well, he had a Malay wife and he didn't seem to like Malay men. But not only did he not like Malay men, he didn't like Arab men either, right? Now, it's not a Muslim thing. You're thinking, oh, this is a Muslim thing, right? No, it's not. He was fine with Indian Muslims or Chinese Muslims. But there are two groups of men he really didn't like, and that was Malay men. Well, sexpats often don't like the race of men that their Asian waifu shares, right? Now, you notice this in 90 Day Fiance as well. Like, you know, when Larry, the sexpat, doesn't seem to like Filipino men very much, wouldn't even deign to eat his girlfriend Jenny's father's cooking. All right. You also notice that the sexpat likes to hide behind the fact that, well, you know what? How can I be racist? If I was racist, would I be dating or marrying an Asian woman? Even though what she wants from you is just a green card. Anyway, the thing is, this guy had this American fella had the same, smug, very condescending boomer vibe, like Bill Maher. He's the guy who introduced me to Bill Maher, actually. I didn't know who Bill Maher was, but because he thought I was a little bit too pro-Palestine, he thought, and a little bit too friendly to Muslims. He didn't like Muslims either, but his hatred for Arabs, nothing to do with Islam, okay? He thought I should watch Bill Maher and basically, well, get another perspective. Oh, and he has the exact same mannerisms as Bill Maher, right? You know, he didn't like Arab men, okay? Arab male students, if they were to take an oral exam with him, I'm not talking about oral exam as in, don't get any naughty thoughts by the word oral, but if they were to take an oral exam with him, well, he would say, like, for example, are you ready? And if they simply said, Inshallah, God willing, he'd just fail them on the spot, right? And behind closed doors, when you didn't have anyone listening to him, he would say some of the most queer things about Arab men. He didn't mind the women, he only hated the men for some reason. Like, he would call them backward, patriarchal. And I pointed out that, look, that we have a very smart Yemeni boy in our class, right, in my class. And he goes like, well, I don't normally associate intelligence with Yemenis, because as far as I'm concerned, marrying their first cousin is part and parcel of their culture. And another quote of his, as you can see, working hard is not a part of the Arab male culture. Working hard, work is for women and slaves, my friend. Yeah, so this is the sort of thing that he would say behind closed doors. And if you told him that, look, I told him, look, I'm not saying you're racist, but some of our students are complaining that you are. They're telling us that they're alleging that you are racist because you're not letting them go out and pray, and you basically seem to be on the warpath against, well, Arabic men, even though you might not be. He said, he was silent for a few moments, and he said, how can I be racist? Just look at my wife. I'm dating a Malay woman. No, I mean, he's not dating, sorry. I'm married to a Malay woman. Do you think I would be racist if I would marry a Malay woman who's darker than most of our students? Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say today about the sexpat epidemic. I'm not offering any solutions on how to counter this epidemic of, disrespectful, ungrateful men from other countries who seem to have this well, who seem to have this assumption that because they come from more affluent societies and they assume their culture is better than ours because they view our culture through an Orientalist lens, and that they should be treated with as a celebrity, as something special. So I don't have any solutions besides recommending that our societies need to progress economically, you know, and also that Asian people, or rather, you know, we should stop being so damn accepting, so damn nice about any type of foreign trash that comes into our country. And again, I have to reiterate, it's not only a white male problem, right? Although the majority of sexpats are right-wing, white, Western men. I knew a Korean sexpat once as well, South Korean sexpat, you know, who was eating with me. At the time, I didn't know he was a sexpat until I found out much later. But we were having dinner at an Indian Malaysian restaurant once, and he said, "Oh, look at me! I'm gonna eat like a native." Ooh. So yeah, he also had a very condescending attitude towards the local cultures, right, and local people. But because he viewed me as Chinese, I'm not one of those natives, one of those jungle Asians in his view, right? Because I'm Chinese. But look, even as I've said, sexpats from South Korea and Japan seem to be a little bit better behaved than their Western counterparts. The Western counterparts are not necessarily white. There could be African American sexpats, although generally speaking, sexpats are white because sexpats are also taking advantage of their white skin, because they're also the more honest sexpats like Better Bachelor will even tell you that in Asia, complexion matters. Like he actually said on one of his forums that, you know, if you've got white skin, that actually matters. So the more honest ones will actually admit to you that, yeah, part of the reason they're here is also because they're taking advantage of colorism, right? Okay, well, thank you very much, and have a good day.
To the laws of supply and demand, if Western women are such a rarity, then the demand from Western men should be quite high. It doesn't work that way because the expat men are busy dating the local women. But aren't they perceived to be obnoxious and bossy like the Western women are? Perhaps, but being outspoken and confident isn't necessarily a problem in those cultures so long as you're a male. In fact, they can be highly desirable characteristics. It shows that you're confident and a good leader. In lots of parts of the world, being a Western male makes you in very high demand. But that's a complete double standard. Why are the women being judged if the men aren't? I don't have all the answers. Like I said, this is not my area of expertise. And I'm not even saying whether or not this is a good or a bad thing. I'm just describing the facts. So a lot of these cultures want women to be meek and submissive, but they want the men to be confident and outgoing. As a very basic simplification, yes. Let me give you an example. I have a Thai friend who now lives in Australia, and she explained to me why her friends would prefer to date Western men. She says that Thai men are too passive, they lack ambition, they often live with their parents well into their 20s and 30s, and that's normal in their culture. So when they compare them to Western men who are ambitious, masculine, and financially independent, the Thai men just have difficulty competing. If the women from these countries are encouraged to be extremely feminine, I'm surprised they're not frightened off by strongly masculine Western men. Perhaps some are, but what a lot of men have noticed when traveling to places like Southeast Asia is that if they're considered a sort of feminine kind of guy back home, when they go to these cultures, their masculinity suddenly becomes a lot more obvious. This makes me think of that stereotype of the nerdy white guy who only dates Asian girls. Well, there is some truth to that stereotype. Men like to feel masculine, they like to feel strong and in charge, but a lot of feminine kind of guys find that Western women are just too much and their masculinity is just getting drowned out. Now, if they find themselves with a softly spoken Asian girlfriend, well, that's their first chance to really come into their own and demonstrate their masculinity inside a relationship. So, are the expat men dating all of the local girls because they want to see what it's like to date someone more traditionally feminine? Often that's the case, especially if he's had bad experiences with Western women who are overly critical and demanding. An Asian woman who's just nice and generous can seem to him like a breath of fresh air. But for others, it's more about just enjoying the experience of being a high-value male. What?
Oh, I'm scared of you every time you open your mouth because it's abuse. I don't like what you're saying. But look at the abuse that you hand out, Quian. Look at the mental fucking abuse that you hand out on a daily basis. With your legs closed, if that's not abuse enough. No, it's not abuse to you, is it? Who else are you fucking, love? Who else are you fucking? Who else are you seeing, Quian? Huh? Because you don't touch me. And that was before we were fucking, when you were married. You still didn't touch me. So what, you can have all the excuses you want, Quian. You're scared of me, whether you didn't fuck me before. Huh? What's your excuse then? Oh, you were still scared of me? That's my mental abuse, love. That's my fucking mental abuse every fucking day with you. And getting nothing from you but this snarling fucking face that I get every day. Because you have no kindness and no love in you. You've just got hate and fucking coldness in you. And you give nothing to the fucking husband that loves you. Fucking nothing. You give him nothing. But you'll take anything you can from him. And then you'll just cast him on the side. But I bet you when you meet your new boyfriend, love, you'll be a lot fucking different, won't you? Bet you when you meet the new fucking bloke, you'll be a lot different, won't you? Different story then, huh? This is my marriage, Quian. You ignoring me. Period. That's it. Begging for your sex, begging for your attention, begging for you to fucking say anything that would be a little bit of kindness to your husband. Instead, I get this snarling fucking face all the time from me. That's all I fucking get from you. You've turned into this really horrible fucking human. Just horrible. And you got your legs fucking closed. And I'm married to you, married. Your husband. You don't even fuck your own husband. When was the last time you kissed your husband, Quian? Or even hugged your husband, Quian? When? When have you ever kissed your fucking husband? Huh? When was the last time you made him a cup of fucking tea?